The morning air outside the courthouse was heavy with anticipation. Reporters clustered on the steps, microphones ready, whispering about the high-profile case that had drawn statewide attention. By the time the doors opened, the marble floored. Lobby was buzzing with tension, and every seat in the courtroom was claimed within minutes. It wasn't just a trial anymore. It had become a spectacle, one that promised revelations no one could have predicted. Inside, the air felt thick, the kind of stillness that happens before a storm. The polished wooden benches creaked beneath the shifting weight of spectators who had come to witness justice unfold. At the front of the room, the judge's bench loomed high, commanding silence with its sheer presence. Below it sat the attorneys' prosecutors on one side, defense on the other, papers neatly stacked, expressions guarded. The defendant, a man in his late 30s, sat stiffly at the defense table. His suit was pressed, his tie knotted tightly. But there was something in the way his fingers twitched against the wood that betrayed his calm exterior. The trial had already stretched over several weeks, each day peeling back another layer of deceit, betrayal, and crime. The prosecution painted the man as ruthless and cunning, while the defense clung desperately to technicalities and denials. But today felt different. Everyone sensed it. Something was about to shift. When the side door opened, and the bailiff announced the arrival of the K-9 unit, the entire courtroom seemed to lean forward as one. In walked Officer Daniels, a veteran of 20 years with a reputation for discipline and composure. By his side trotted a German shepherd, broad-shouldered, alert, his coat a striking blend of black and tan. His presence alone demanded respect. The dog's paws clicked against the polished floor as he entered, his head high, eyes scanning every face in the room. This was no ordinary animal. He carried himself with authority, like a soldier accustomed to battlefields, yet aware that today's war was fought with silence and stares. Gasps rippled quietly through the gallery. Though police dogs often appeared in court to affirm evidence or provide demonstrations, there was something unique about this one. His eyes seemed too intelligent, his movements too purposeful. Even those who had never cared for dogs found themselves watching him with a strange fascination. At the far end of the gallery, a young woman sat with her daughter, perched on her lap. The girl was no more than 3, her soft curls framing a face that was both curious and calm. She should have been restless, fidgeting as toddlers do, but instead she sat perfectly still, her gaze locked firmly on the German shepherd. Her small hands gripped the wooden edge of the bench, and her lips parted as though she recognized something no one else could. Her mother gently adjusted her, whispering for her to sit still, but the child didn't respond. Her wide brown eyes never left the dog. The judge cleared his throat, his gravelly voice echoing in the chamber. "This court will come to order." The gavel struck once, sharp and commanding, yet the attention of many remained fixed on the animal now seated dutifully beside Officer Daniels. As testimony began, the dog sat motionless, his ears pricked, eyes occasionally flicking toward the defendant. Several jurors noticed the subtle tension in the dog's posture, though none dared comment. Trained K-9 South were taught to remain neutral unless given a command. But animals, some whispered, had instincts beyond human understanding. The defense attorney droned on, presenting evidence meant to sow doubt, but few seemed to hear him. The German shepherd shifted, his muscles taut, eyes darting briefly toward the back of the room, toward the little girl. It was subtle at first, a mere flicker of recognition, but it didn't go unnoticed. A reporter scribbled a note. "Dog reacts to child in gallery." The girl, in turn, leaned forward slightly, her tiny shoes dangling off the bench. Her mother frowned, unsure why her daughter was so fixated on the police dog. As minutes stretched into an hour, the tension refused to ease. The child's stare deepened, and the dog's occasional glances toward her grew more frequent. No one could quite explain it, but a strange current of energy seemed to pass between them, something that had nothing to do with the crime being tried, yet everything to do with what was about to surface. The defendant shifted uncomfortably in his seat, perhaps sensing the atmosphere tilt against him. He whispered something to his attorney, who dismissed him with a wave. Still, beads of sweat formed at his temple, and he wiped them with a nervous flick of his handkerchief. The bailiff noticed the girl's fixed attention and whispered to the judge, but the judge only waved it off for the moment. Children in court were distractions at best, though harmless ones. Yet something about this child didn't feel like a distraction. It felt like a key waiting to be turned. Outside the courtroom, news outlets prepared their midday reports, unaware that inside, history was about to be written in the unlikeliest way. And at the very center of it all, a silent dog whose instincts had never failed him, and a 3-year-old child who seemed to see in him something the rest of the world had missed. The trial was supposed to be about a man's guilt or innocence. But as the dog's eyes locked once more with the little girl's, it became clear the real story was only just beginning. The courtroom settled into its rhythm, the cadence of questions and objections bouncing back and forth like a slow-moving chess match. Lawyers shuffled papers, jurors scribbled notes. The defendant's attorney spoke with exaggerated confidence. On the surface, it was routine. But beneath that carefully constructed order was a tension no one could quite name. It centered not on the defendant, not even on the looming judge, but on a little girl, no taller than the benches that surrounded her. Her mother, Emily, had not intended to bring her daughter, Lily, to court that day. But childcare had fallen through, and after weeks of supporting her sister, a key witness in the case, Emily had little choice. She whispered apologies as they entered, ushered her daughter into the back row, and prayed she would sit quietly with her toy tucked inside her bag. But Lily didn't want her toy. She didn't want to scribble on paper or ask endless toddler questions. From the moment the police dog entered, she was locked in, her entire body still, her big brown eyes tracking every move the German Shepherd made. At first, Emily was grateful. Silence from a 3-year-old in such a setting was a miracle. But as minutes turned to nearly an hour, she began to notice how unusual it was. Children her daughter's age didn't fix their gaze so intensely. They wriggled, they whispered, they grew bored. Yet Lily didn't even blink. The girl's gaze wasn't passive either. It was searching, almost knowing. She leaned slightly forward whenever the dog shifted, her lips parting like she wanted to call out, but didn't dare. Her small fingers curled against the polished bench, holding tight, as if afraid something precious might slip away if she moved. A juror in the second row noticed her and nudged his neighbor. The neighbor followed his gaze, and soon 2 pairs of eyes were on the child, then 3. One reporter, scanning for reactions beyond the attorney's, also noticed. He underlined in his notebook, "Child staring at dog significance?" The defense tried to redirect attention. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the attorney intoned, "you must focus on the evidence, not the theatrics." He gestured broadly, casting a glance toward the gallery. Some suspected he had caught wind of the child's strange focus and wanted to smother it before it grew. But dismissing it only drew more subtle attention. The jurors couldn't help. The scene was too unusual. The judge, who had weathered decades of trials, leaned back in his chair. His eyes, sharp as ever, caught sight of the girl. He made a note in his ledger, though he did not comment. Judges were trained to keep order, not draw attention to distractions. Yet even he sensed something different. Meanwhile, the dog himself, this highly trained German Shepherd, disciplined to respond only to commands, began to return the gaze. Not constantly, not enough to break decorum, but enough to unsettle. His ears flicked in her direction, his head turning fractionally whenever she shifted. It wasn't random scanning. It was deliberate recognition. Emily shifted uncomfortably, placing her hand over Lily's. "Sweetheart, stop staring," she whispered. But Lily only shook her head slowly. Her lips moved in silence, mouthing words her mother couldn't catch. A faint smile tugged at her mouth, not one of amusement, but one of relief, like someone who had just spotted a long-lost friend across a crowded room. Emily's chest tightened. She couldn't explain it, but something inside her stirred, an echo of a memory, perhaps, or a fear she didn't want to name. She squeezed her daughter's hand, trying to anchor her. "It's just a police dog, honey. That's all." But Lily didn't answer. Her gaze only deepened. The prosecution continued, presenting witness testimony. But for many in the gallery, the real drama was unfolding silently in the back. Small things began to ripple outward. A whisper here. A pointed, "Look there." The reporters, sensing a story beneath the story, jotted faster. The jurors, though sworn to neutrality, found their eyes drifting toward the girl as often as toward the witnesses. Even Officer Daniels, standing tall beside his partner, began to notice. He glanced at the dog, then at the child, and back. At the dog again. Years of service had taught him to trust his partner's instincts. And right now, his partner was distracted by something more than courtroom noise. The defendant shifted in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he followed the unspoken chain of attention. His lips tightened. He tapped his attorney's sleeve and muttered something. The attorney frowned, waved him off, but the defendant's agitation didn't fade. He could sense, though, he couldn't yet name that the smallest person in the room might pose the greatest threat to his carefully constructed defense. The bailiff, positioned near the entrance, leaned closer to the judge and whispered, "Sir, the child in the gallery, she's staring at the K9. Should I?" The judge raised a hand. "No, not yet. Let it be." His voice was quiet but firm. He wasn't about to disrupt a trial over a child's curiosity. Still, a crease deepened on his brow. Children had a way of exposing truths without meaning to. By now, the air in the courtroom felt different. Those who noticed the girl's presence sensed they were watching the early stages of something important, though none could articulate why. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the ground would soon give way, but not knowing when. Lily blinked finally, long lashes brushing her cheeks, but when she opened her eyes again, they were wet, shimmering with something raw. Her tiny shoulders rose and fell in a deep, shaky breath. She pressed her hand to her chest and whispered something only her mother heard. "Buddy." Emily froze. Her stomach dropped. A name carved through her like a knife. "Sweetheart?" "What did you say?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the courtroom's hum. But Lily didn't answer. She only kept staring, her small body trembling now, her lips pressing together as though holding back words that wanted to escape. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She remembered the dog they had once had years ago. A German shepherd, loyal and gentle, who had vanished under strange circumstances. Lily had been too young to remember clearly, or so Emily had believed. But what if she did remember? Emily gripped her daughter tighter, heart racing, unsure whether to hush her or let her speak. She looked toward the front, with the German. Shepherd sat as still as stone, but his eyes glowed with recognition, locked on her daughter's. The mother's mind spun with questions. Could it be the same dog? No, impossible. The odds were astronomical. And yet, why did her daughter look so certain? Why did the dog seem equally transfixed? The weight of it pressed down on her chest. She knew, though, she couldn't explain. How that this wasn't over. The courtroom was on the brink of something extraordinary. And as she looked down at her daughter's trembling hand, still pointing toward the police dog, Emily realized something chilling. Lily wasn't just watching, she was remembering. And soon, the rest of the courtroom would have to hear what she had to say. The courtroom clock ticked steadily, but for many inside, time seemed suspended. The lawyer's words blurred into background noise. Everyone's eyes, whether consciously or not, drifted toward the German shepherd seated beside Officer Daniels. At first, the dog had been a model of discipline, head high, posture alert, every muscle coiled with the precision of a trained guardian. But gradually, a shift began to ripple through his body. Subtle at first, the twitch of an ear, the flare of nostrils. Then, unmistakably, a low, rumbling growl. The sound was quiet but undeniable. It rose from deep in his chest, vibrating through the polished wooden floor, reaching the ears of those closest to him first. Heads turned, eyes widened. Dogs like him didn't growl without reason. Officer Daniels reacted instantly. His hand tightened on the leash, his voice firm. "Easy, boy, easy." But the shepherd didn't obey fully. His eyes had locked on a target toward the back of the gallery, where a small figure sat motionless. His tail, which had been curled neatly around his paws, gave a single sharp thump against the floor. The little girl didn't flinch. She leaned forward on the bench, her tiny hands gripping the edge as if pulling herself closer. Her eyes widened, and for the first time that morning, a small sound escaped her lips, half gasp, half laugh, trembling with recognition. "Buddy!" Emily's heart clenched. She pressed her hand gently against her daughter's back, whispering frantically, "Sweetheart, not now, please." But her own voice betrayed her, cracking under the weight of memory. The growl grew louder, not menacing, but restless, urgent. The dog strained forward against the leash, his body trembling as though holding back an instinct far stronger than training. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Jurors exchanged startled looks. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching furiously. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably, one hand brushing his holster, uncertain whether the dog was about to lunge. The judge slammed his gavel down, the sharp crack echoing like a gunshot. "Order! Control that animal. I've got him. Your honor," Officer Daniels said, though sweat dotted his brow. He had worked with this dog for 3 years, through raids, arrests, and patrols. Never, not once, had he seen him behave this way in a courtroom. And still, the shepherd's gaze never wavered. His eyes burned with recognition, his growl a language no one could translate except, perhaps, the child he stared at. The defendant shifted nervously, glancing toward the dog with unease. His hands fidgeted on the table, his face pale. He muttered something to his lawyer, who shook his head furiously, trying to keep the attention off this strange exchange. But it was too late. The atmosphere had changed. Emily swallowed hard, her pulse racing. She could feel the courtroom's attention shifting toward her daughter. She tried to tuck Lily against her side, shielding her from the stares, but the girl resisted. Her little body leaned forward, stubborn and certain, her finger lifting slightly as if she wanted to point. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling but insistent. "It's him." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She hadn't heard that name in years, hadn't dared speak it aloud since the night their beloved dog had disappeared. Lily had been so young then, barely old enough to remember. Or so Emily had thought. The German shepherd gave a sudden bark, sharp and loud, echoing against the wooden walls. Gasps filled the room. Officer Daniels pulled hard on the leash, but the dog resisted, muscles surging, eyes still fixed on the child. "Order!" The judge thundered, his gavel pounding again. "If this animal cannot be controlled, he will be removed from the courtroom immediately." But even as he spoke, something in his voice betrayed him. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a disruption to be brushed aside. Something meaningful was unfolding before his eyes. The jurors whispered among themselves, unable to look away. The defense attorney tried to object, his voice shrill, but it was drowned out by the murmurs of the gallery. Reporters scrambled to capture every detail. Dog breaks training. Growls at gallery. Child reacts. For Emily, time slowed. She looked. At her daughter, at the tears forming in her wide eyes, at the certainty written across her small face. And she looked at the dog, those familiar markings, that sane, intelligent gaze, the way his body leaned forward, as though he would break every command just to reach her little girl. It was impossible. It was undeniable. "Buddy," Lily whispered. Again, louder this time. The word cut through the air like a blade. It was soft, innocent, but it carried a weight that silenced the entire courtroom. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one breathed. The judge leaned forward, his gavel frozen midair. Officer Daniels froze, eyes darting between his partner and the child. Even the defendant sat motionless, his jaw clenched tight. And in that silence, the dog's growl softened into a whine, a sound of longing, of recognition, of something broken being mended. His tail thumped once more, harder now, as though confirming what the little girl had said. Emily covered her mouth, tears streaming freely now. She had spent years telling herself that Buddy was gone forever, that their family's loss was something they would have to accept. But in that moment, she saw truth staring back at her. It wasn't just a police dog. It was him. The room erupted in chaos, whispers, gasps, a scrape of chairs as jurors leaned forward. The judge pounded his gavel again, his voice struggling to rise above the storm. Silence. Silence in this court. But the silence had already been shattered. The balance of the trial had shifted irreversibly, all because a dog had broken. His training and a child had spoken a single familiar name. And though no one knew it yet, those two forces, the loyalty of a dog and the innocence of a child, were about to unravel everything that had been carefully hidden. The courtroom wasn't just witnessing a trial anymore. It was witnessing the beginning of a revelation. The silence after Lily's soft words was deafening. Courtrooms were built for order, for structured speech where every word carried legal weight. Yet now, all formality dissolved into a stunned hush. The gavel, frozen in the judge's hand, might as well have been a child's toy, for all the authority it commanded at that moment. Lily's small hand remained extended, her finger pointing unwaveringly at the German shepherd. Her lips trembled, but her eyes were steady, innocent eyes, carrying certainty no lawyer could challenge. She had spoken two words, simple and pure. "That's Buddy." The reporters reacted first. Pens scratched furiously against paper. Cameras discreetly lifted to capture the faces in the room. They knew what they had just heard was no ordinary outburst. It was the kind of revelation that could change the course of a case and make headlines across the nation. Officer Daniels, still gripping the leash, looked down at his partner in disbelief. His mouth opened as though to argue, to deny the possibility, but the words caught in his throat. The dog was no longer growling. Instead, his posture had softened. His ears tilted forward, eyes brightening as he leaned ever so slightly toward the girl, tail brushing the ground once, twice, with restrained excitement. "Your Honor," the defense attorney blurted, his voice higher than usual, "this is highly irregular. A child's random statement has no bearing on." "Sit down, Mr. Lowell," the judge cut in sharply, his eyes never leaving the child. His voice carried the weight of authority, but also the faintest trace of curiosity. He had presided over thousands of cases, heard countless testimonies, but never had a toddler interrupted with such conviction, and never had a police dog seem to respond in kind. Emily, her face pale, tried desperately to quiet her daughter. She pulled Lily close, whispering frantically, "Sweetheart, please, don't say anything more." But the girl squirmed against her mother's arms, her gaze still fixed on the shepherd, her voice trembling yet stronger now. "It's him. Mommy, I know it's him. That's Buddy." Gasps rippled again, spreading through the gallery like waves breaking against rocks. Jurors exchanged looks, some skeptical, some shaken. One woman pressed her hand to her chest, visibly moved. The prosecutor leaned forward, whispering something urgently to his assistant. Even the bailiff, usually stoic, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between the girl and the dog, as if witnessing something he couldn't explain. The judge finally set his gavel down and addressed Emily directly. "Ma'am, what is the meaning of this?" Emily's lips trembled as she stood, clutching her daughter to her hip. Her knees felt weak beneath her, but she forced herself upright under the scrutiny of dozens of eyes. "Your Honor, I don't know what to say, my daughter. She thinks she recognizes the dog." "She doesn't think," Lily insisted, her small voice ringing clear in the heavy room. "I know. He's Buddy. He used to sleep by my bed. He used to lick my face when I cried. I know him." Tears stung Emily's eyes. How could she deny what her daughter said? The memories came rushing back. A playful German shepherd bounding across their yard, a loyal shadow following Lily wherever. She toddled, a pair of intelligent eyes that had felt almost human in their understanding. And then the night he vanished. No broken fence, no paw prints, just emptiness. For years she had told herself it was theft, or maybe worse. They had grieved, and life had trudged on. But here was her daughter, naming him without hesitation. The judge's eyes flicked to Officer Daniels. "Officer, this is your K-9 partner?" "Yes, Your Honor," Daniels replied, though his voice was unusually tight. "Registered with the department as Max. Found during a raid 2 years ago. Abandoned." "Abandoned," the judge repeated, his eyes narrowing. "And yet this child claims otherwise." Before Daniels could respond, the dog made his own statement. A soft whine slipped from his throat, followed by a gentle tug forward. He didn't lunge, didn't bark. He simply pulled toward the girl, as though gravity itself bound them together. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Lily reached both arms out instinctively, as though calling an old friend home. "This is absurd." The defense attorney shouted, standing now, red-faced. "We cannot derail these proceedings over the fantasy of a toddler. Children imagine things all the time. Dogs are interchangeable." "Objection overruled," the judge barked. His gavel struck hard, silencing the man. This court will not dismiss what is unfolding before its very eyes. "Officer Daniels, bring the dog forward." The command hung heavy in the air. Daniels hesitated. Protocol forbade breaking AK-9's training without cause, but the judge's stare brooked no refusal. With a sigh, he loosened his grip and gave the command to heel. The shepherd rose instantly, muscles taut, eyes locked on the child. Step by deliberate step, he approached. The sound of his nails clicking against the floor was the only sound in the hushed courtroom. Every pair of eyes followed his movement, breath held, hearts pounding. Emily's grip on her daughter tightened, torn between fear and hope. Lily, however, showed no fear at all. Her tiny hands reached forward, trembling not with fright, but anticipation. When the shepherd stopped just a few feet away, his body quivered. His tail wagged once, twice, then faster, as though years of restraint had suddenly snapped. He let out a soft, plaintive whine, the kind of sound only a beloved family dog makes when reunited with someone it thought it had lost forever. The gallery gasped in unison. Lily's tears spilled freely now, her voice breaking into a cry. "Buddy, it's you!" And at that moment, the courtroom wasn't a place of law or punishment. It was a place of undeniable truth carried not by legal arguments, but by the unshakable bond between a child and her dog. The judge leaned back, slowly exhaling through his nose. He had thought he'd seen everything the justice system had to offer. But as the child clung to her mother and the dog whimpered with recognition, he knew he was watching something extraordinary, something that would ripple far beyond this case. The defendant shifted in his chair, beads of sweat rolling down his temple. For the first time in the trial, his mask of composure cracked. And though no verdict had yet been given, though the trial was far from finished, everyone in that room understood. The little girl's 2 words had already changed everything. The courtroom remained in stunned silence, but the energy had shifted. This was no longer just a legal proceeding. It had become a scene of revelation. Emily clutched Lily to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks, while the little girl's tiny hands rested on the German shepherd's broad head, stroking his fur with gentle certainty. Officer Daniels, usually unflappable, lowered his leash slightly, allowing the dog just enough freedom to show his recognition. Every muscle in the shepherd's body radiated focus and joy, his ears flicking to each whispered name, each soft word from Lily. He had known this child before, had protected her, loved her, and now recognition shone in his eyes brighter than any obedience training. "Your Honor," Emily began, her voice shaky. I think my daughter is right. This dog, he was our family dog. His name was Buddy. He disappeared 2 years ago, and..." Her voice broke, choking on the memory of sleepless nights, frantic searches, and unanswered questions. He was gone, until today. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing, sensing the weight of what she was saying. "Gone, ma'am? Explain." Emily took a deep breath, fighting the tremor in her hands. "Buddy was our dog. He vanished one night. There were no signs of forced entry. No neighbors saw anything. For years, we assumed he'd been stolen or taken. My daughter never stopped asking for him. We never thought we'd see him again." She paused, glancing down at Lily, who whispered softly, "I knew he'd come back." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Reporters jostled for position, scribbling furiously. Jurors leaned forward. Even the defendant shifted, suddenly attentive, his color draining. He knew, even if he hadn't admitted it aloud, that this revelation carried the potential to undo everything he had planned. Officer Daniels stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, this dog is registered with our department as Max. We found him abandoned during a raid 2 years ago. He has been trained for police work since then, but his origin prior to that was unknown. I never considered that he might have been a family pet before his time with us." The courtroom seemed to inhale collectively. It was the missing linked the explanation behind the child's certainty, the dog's uncharacteristic reaction. The threads that had puzzled everyone began to intertwine. Emily's voice grew steadier. "I can't explain why she recognized him immediately. But Lily has always had a strong bond with animals. Buddy was different. He wasn't just a dog. He was part of our family. He protected us, comforted us, and Lily loved him more than anything. She wouldn't make a mistake about him." The judge nodded slowly, his brow furrowed. "Officer Daniels, is there any way to verify the dog's identity beyond the child's recognition?" Daniels hesitated. "We can check the microchip, Your Honor, but the records show it was altered, tampered with. Whoever abandoned him had knowledge of the chip and may have tried to cover their tracks." A ripple of shock spread across the courtroom. The defense attorney leaned forward, frowning. "Tampered? That's a bold claim with no proof. You have nothing to connect this dog to any supposed past owners." Emily's hands tightened around Lily. "It's not just proof. In records," she said, her voice quivering but firm. "It's her, Lily. She knew him. She recognized him. And the dog, he knew her. The judge's eyes swept the room. This court acknowledges the potential significance of this identification. Officer Daniels, please ensure the dog's behavior and physical characteristics are documented. We will allow this child's recognition to be entered into consideration while the court verifies the facts. Even as the legal procedure continued, the courtroom felt different. Everyone present sensed something rare and extraordinary, a reunion that transcended law, logic, and probability. Meanwhile, Lily's gaze remained locked on the dog. She stroked his head gently, whispering soft, encouraging words. The dog responded, in kind, whining softly, nudging her hand with his snout, and wagging his tail in a rhythm that spoke volumes. It was a silent conversation, one only they could understand. Emily whispered to her daughter, "Sweetheart, what did he do before he disappeared? Do you remember?" Lily nodded, tiny fingers tracing the dog's ears. "He used to sleep by my bed. He'd wake me up if I cried. He chased the squirrels in the yard. I know him, Mommy. He's mine." The murmurs in the courtroom intensified. Jurors whispered among themselves, the air thick with tension. Reporters exchanged excited glances, recognizing a story that could captivate anyone. Cameras focused, pens scribbled, and the judge allowed the documentation to continue, careful to keep order. Officer Daniels knelt slightly to eye the dog, whispering, "Is it true, boy? Did you have a family before this?" The shepherd's ears twitched, and he let out a soft whine, nuzzling closer to Lily. That small, instinctual gesture spoke louder than any human testimony. Across the room, the defendant's composure faltered. He shifted uneasily, his face paling as the realization began to sink in. The stolen dog, the tampered microchip, the child's certainty, all pieces of evidence he had hoped would never surface. And now, here they were, staring him in the face. Emily took a deep breath, her voice stronger now. "Your Honor, I don't know how it happened. I don't know who took him or why. But this is Buddy. He's our dog. And Lily, she never lied about him." The judge leaned back, thoughtful. "So, the child's recognition aligns with prior ownership, and the dog's behavior corroborates it?" "Yes, Your Honor," Officer Daniels confirmed, still gripping the leash lightly. "Based on his reactions, tail movement, whining, body posture, it is highly likely this is the same dog. The bond is undeniable." The courtroom fell into a rare silence, the kind that fills the space when reality exceeds expectation. Everyone, jurors, reporters, officers, even the defendant, felt the gravity of the moment. This was no longer speculation. A child's recognition, validated by instinctual canine behavior, had created a bridge to truth that records alone could not provide. Emily bent down to Lily, brushing stray curls from her daughter's tear-streaked face. "You are right, sweetie. You knew him all along." Lily hugged the dog tightly, her small body trembling. "I knew he'd come back." Her words, simple and pure, echoed through the courtroom, reverberating in the hearts of those who heard them. Officer Daniels stood back, watching the reunion with a mixture of pride and awe. Years of service had shown him bravery, courage, and loyalty, but never had he witnessed such raw, undeniable connection between human and animal in the sterile confines of a courtroom. The judge glanced down at the child, then at the dog, and finally at the defendant. His voice was calm, but heavy with authority. "This court recognizes the child's testimony, the dog's behavior, and the supporting circumstances as significant. We will proceed, keeping in mind that truth sometimes presents itself in the most unexpected forms." For Emily, the moment was bittersweet. She had feared the courtroom would be an ordeal for her daughter, a place of fear and confusion. Instead, Lily had become the center of revelation, guiding the truth into the light. The defendant, now pale, and sweating, whispered to his attorney, but the words fell on deaf ears. The bond between child and dog was undeniable, and it had shifted the scales. As the courtroom continued its proceedings, there was no doubt. The child's recognition and the shepherd's instinctive response had opened a door to a hidden truth, one that would ripple through the trial, challenge evidence, and bring long overdue justice closer than anyone had expected. And in that quiet moment between statements and objections, a mother, her daughter, and a dog shared a reunion that had been years in the making, a bond reaffirmed in the most public of stages, a testament to loyalty, memory, and the truth that cannot be hidden forever. The courtroom's atmosphere had shifted completely. What had begun as a straightforward criminal trial was now layered with an unexpected, almost miraculous twist. Jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, reporters scribbled furiously, and even the defendant's usually unflappable demeanor began to crack under the weight of unfolding events. All eyes alternated between a little girl, a German shepherd, and a mother whose world had suddenly reopened old wounds. Officer Daniels, still holding the leash loosely, observed the dog's body language carefully. Buddy's ears pricked, eyes soft yet alert, every movement attuned to Lily's gestures. This was no ordinary canine reaction. He leaned forward as she moved, tail flicking in a rhythm only a familiar heart could elicit. To the untrained observer, it might appear cute, even whimsical. But to Daniels, it was confirmation that this was the same dog lost years ago, and that the child's recognition had weighed far beyond innocence. Emily pressed a hand to her chest, watching Lily stroke the dog's ears with reverent determination. Her mind raced, recalling the day Buddy had disappeared. She remembered waking in the middle of the night to a quiet house, calling out to her daughter and the dog only to find him gone. Panic had set in immediately. Hours of searching yielded nothing. They had called neighbors, filed reports, even posted photos online, but Buddy had vanished as if swallowed by the night. Lily had cried herself to sleep every night for weeks, asking for her dog, her protector, her friend. Now, years later, the impossible seemed to have returned. The judge, sensing the significance, decided to slow the trial's pace. This court will now officially recognize the child's testimony regarding the identification of the dog. Officer Daniels, please provide any records, physical documentation, or behavioral notes that corroborate this claim. Daniels nodded. He had prepared a binder in anticipation of questions, but never imagined it would be used in this context. Your Honor, the dog was found abandoned in a warehouse during a drug raid 2 years ago. His microchip was tampered with, which prevented U.S. from identifying previous owners. Since then, he has been trained extensively for police work tracking, obedience, apprehension, but nothing in his training accounts for this recognition. His reactions are instinctual and consistent with prior bonding experiences. Gasps spread through the gallery. Reporters jostled for position, scribbling notes at lightning speed. Jurors leaned forward, whispering to one another. Even the defendant's attorney turned pale. For the first time, the defense faced a scenario that was both unpredictable and damning. The child's recognition, coupled with the dog's behavioral confirmation, created a living, breathing form of evidence that could not be easily dismissed. Emily swallowed hard. Her daughter's words echoed in her mind. I know him. That's Buddy. Her little girl had never been wrong about him before. This instinctive knowledge was precise and unwavering. Emily realized that the courtroom, though a place of logic and law, was now witnessing something fundamentally emotional, something that transcended human reasoning. The defense attorney attempted to interject. Your Honor, we must object. The child is only 3 years old. Her recognition cannot constitute evidence. It is anecdotal. Objection overruled, the judge said firmly. His gaze swept across the courtroom, landing on the attorney for emphasis. This child's identification, corroborated by documented canine behavior and the dog's reaction, will be considered as part of the court record. We will allow the matter to be fully examined before rendering judgment. The defendant's hands trembled as he whispered to his attorney. His usual composure had cracked. For years, he had believed that covering the dog's origins would shield him from exposure. But the child's certainty, backed by instinctual canine behavior, was a force he could not manipulate. Sweat beaded on his brow as he realized that the meticulous plan he had crafted for the trial was now unraveling thread by thread. Meanwhile, the shepherd Buddy nudged Lily gently, letting out a soft, satisfied whine, each subtle movement pressing his head into her hand, leaning against her tiny frame. Flicking his tail was a testament to the bond they had shared before separation. The jurors noticed it, their expressions softening as they realized that this bond was undeniable. Some wiped at tears they hadn't expected to shed. Others simply sat in stunned silence, unsure what they were witnessing, but fully aware it was extraordinary. Emily whispered to Lily, her voice quivering but firm. "Sweetheart, do you remember everything about him?" "Where he used to sleep." Lily nodded vigorously. "By my bed. He woke me if I cried. He chased the squirrels. He let me ride on his back sometimes when I was little." Her eyes sparkled as the memories spilled forth, raw and unfiltered. "I know him. He's mine." Officer Daniels carefully documented each behavioral reaction. He noted tail position, ear movements, eye contact, and soft vocalizations. Kind of instinctive responses only a dog with a strong prior attachment would demonstrate. This was more than testimony. It was a behavioral audit confirming identity, something rarely captured so clearly in a courtroom setting. The judge, flipping through the documentation, spoke slowly. "This court acknowledges that the evidence, while unconventional, carries weight. We will allow expert testimony regarding canine behavior to support the identification. Additionally, the child's recognition will be considered in conjunction with existing records of the dog's disappearance and recovery." Emily's chest heaved with relief. For the first time in years, she felt hope and justice aligned. Buddy wasn't just a dog. He was part of their family once again, and now the courtroom itself bore witness to the truth. The defendant's face drained of color further as the implications settled in. His whispered urgings to his attorney were futile. The evidence, previously hidden, now stood exposed through no fault of human investigation, through instinct, memory, and love. He shifted uneasily, realizing that even the carefully constructed denials of prior ownership could not withstand what had unfolded. Outside the courtroom, reporters began sending live updates, sensing a story of national interest. This was more than a legal case. It was a human story, intertwined with the loyalty and intelligence of a dog, the honoring memory of a child, and the emotional reunification of a family. Headlines would write themselves. Child recognizes lost dog in courtroom. Family. Reunion under judicial scrutiny. Canine instincts change trial outcome. Inside, Emily hugged Lily tightly, tears streaming down both their faces. The little girl's soft giggle echoed through the gallery. Buddy leaned into the embrace, his body pressing close, as if he too understood the magnitude of the moment. The bond that had been forcibly broken was now reaffirmed, witnessed by dozens of strangers who would carry the memory of this moment long after the gavel fell. The judge's gavel finally struck again, signaling order. The court will continue with testimony, keeping in mind that the dog's identification and the child's recognition are significant to the proceedings. Further evidence may be examined. Even as proceedings resumed, the energy in the room remained charged. Witnesses spoke, lawyers presented arguments, but the courtroom was forever altered. Everyone present understood they were witnessing more than a trial. They were witnessing truth, revealed in the most unlikely manner, through a child's unwavering memory and a dog's instinctive recognition. Emily whispered to Lily once more. "You were right, sweetie. You knew him all along." Lily smiled, her small hand running along Buddy's fur. "I told you, Mommy, he'd come back. I knew it." And in that moment, the scales of justice had begun to tip, not solely through human argument, but through love, memory, and an unbreakable bond that defied time and circumstance. The defendant slumped slightly in his chair, defeated in ways no legal strategy could prevent. The courtroom knew it. The little girl's 2 words and the dog's quiet affirmation had started a cascade of truth that would dismantle deception and bring justice closer than anyone had anticipated. The courtroom felt almost suspended in time. Every movement, every whisper, every soft breath seemed amplified. Buddy, the German shepherd, remained close to Lily, his body radiating recognition, loyalty, and the quiet intensity of a dog reunited with a child he had loved and protected. His tail wagged slowly at first, then faster, thumping against the polished wood floor as though trying to bridge the years lost. Lily, her tiny hands trembling, reached out to stroke his ears. Her face was flushed with excitement and relief, tears rolling freely. "Buddy, I missed you," she whispered, voice breaking with a mixture of awe and joy. Emily held her daughter tightly, chest heaving. "I know, sweetheart, I know." She could feel the years of longing, grief, and uncertainty pouring out of her little girl in this single, fragile moment. She realized how much Lily had carried inside her memories, too profound for words, feelings too deep for anyone but a child with an extraordinary bond to understand. Officer Daniels knelt down beside the dog, trying to maintain control while observing the reunion. His hand rested lightly on Buddy's neck, but he did not restrain him. There was no need. Every movement the dog made was deliberate, intentional, and entirely directed toward Lily. The instinctive bond between them was undeniable. "Your Honor," Emily said, standing, her voice quivering but firm. This dog isn't just any dog. He was part of our family. Lily has never been wrong about him before. And now he's here, right here with us." The judge, leaning forward in his chair, observed the scene with a mixture of curiosity and solemnity. He had seen countless emotional displays in courtrooms over the years, witnesses breaking down, families crying, but this was different. This was pure, unfiltered emotion, wrapped in a bond that transcended human language and legal procedure. The jurors shifted uncomfortably. Some dabbed tears, others whispered to each other. Even the most skeptical of reporters were caught off guard. Cameras clicked, pens scratched against paper, yet none of these tools could capture the depth of what was happening. It was a moment meant to be witnessed, not recorded, a convergence of love, instinct, and memory. The defendant, pale and stiff, shifted in his chair. His earlier composure had eroded completely. He whispered to his attorney, voice tight, eyes darting between the child and the dog. This changes everything." "It's irrelevant," the attorney hissed, but the words rang hollow. The defendant's fear was visible, undeniable. A bond forged years ago between child and dog had broken through years of deceit and manipulation. The law could recognize evidence, but it could not fabricate instinct, nor could it erase recognition. Lily's hands moved over Buddy's head, tracing familiar patterns on his fur, her fingers pressing softly into his neck as she murmured, "I remember everything. You used to play fetch. You used to chase squirrels. You always stayed by me." Her voice grew firmer as she continued, "I knew you'd come back. I knew it." The judge's gaze softened, observing the authenticity of the moment. "Officer Daniels," he said quietly, "document the dog's behavior. It will become part of the official record." This is not merely anecdotal, it is behavioral evidence. Daniels nodded, recording every movement. The tilt of the head, the soft whine, the slight nudge toward Lily, the tail thumping against the floor, all gestures indicative of recognition and attachment. This was more than obedience. It was a memory, a living testament to a bond that had survived separation and time. Emily watched in awe, her heart swelling. For years, she had mourned the loss of Buddy alongside her daughter. Nights had been long and sleepless, the yard empty, the home quiet without the familiar presence of the dog. She had feared Lily's memories would fade, that the little girl's certainty was just wishful thinking. But now, every doubt evaporated. Buddy was here, and he had remembered. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Jurors whispered among themselves, reporters scribbled furiously, and even the defense team looked stunned. The weight of truth, delivered in the most extraordinary way, had shifted the balance of the trial. Lily hugged Buddy tightly, burying her face in his neck. "You're here. You're really here," she cried, a mixture of laughter and tears mingling in her voice. Buddy responded by leaning into her embrace, pressing his warm body against hers, and letting out a soft, contented whine. The sound was primal, intimate, and impossible to ignore. Emily pressed her lips to Lily's head, murmuring, "It's okay, sweetie. You don't have to worry anymore. He's back." The courtroom atmosphere changed again. What had been a place of tension, litigation, and authority transformed into a sanctuary of reconciliation. Even the officers present were moved. Some dabbed at eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably, unused to being touched by such raw emotion in a formal setting. The judge allowed a pause, giving Emily and Lily time to collect themselves. Silence reigned, not tense silence, but respectful acknowledgement. Witnesses, jurors, and spectators alike understood that the bond on display was sacred, untouchable by argument or manipulation. Officer Daniels finally spoke, his voice calm but tinged with awe. "Your Honor, the dog's behavior confirms that he has recognized the child. All instinctive indicators, tail position, vocalization, body posture corroborate her identification. This is beyond a simple recognition. It is a bond reaffirmed after years of separation." The defendant's attorney tried again, but the room was not receptive. "This is emotional manipulation," he cried. "A child, a dog, this has no place in legal proceedings." The judge raised a hand, silencing him. "This court does not dismiss evidence simply because it is unusual. Human and animal recognition, corroborated by documented behavior, is admissible. We will proceed with these facts in mind." Emily's tears had stopped, replaced by a sense of overwhelming relief. She held Lily close, who now rested her small head against Buddy's back, soft snores beginning as the child felt the comfort of her old friend. Buddy, too, seemed calmer, reassured by the presence of the family he had lost and found again. For the jurors, the lesson was clear. This was more than evidence. It was testimony of the kind that transcended words. A child's memory and a dog's instinct had aligned to reveal the truth that had remained hidden for years. They watched, captivated, as innocence and loyalty bridged the gap between past and present, between loss and reunion. The defendant's eyes widened. He realized that no amount of legal maneuvering could counteract this display. The bond was undeniable. The evidence, while unconventional, could not be ignored. Every strategy he had relied upon to obscure facts now seemed irrelevant in the face of such raw, observable truth. Emily whispered to Lily again, stroking her hair gently. "You did it, sweetheart. You brought him back." Lily smiled through her tears, small arms hugging Buddy tightly. "I knew he'd come back. I never forgot him." Officer Daniels watched silently, feeling an uncommon warmth in his chest. Dogs were loyal by nature, but the depth of connection displayed here went beyond ordinary training or instinct. It was love, memory, and recognition intertwined, a living record that no words could fully capture. The courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary, a reunion that was at once personal, emotional, and deeply revelatory. For the first time in years, Emily felt complete. For Lily, the world felt safe again. And for Buddy, the lost years were momentarily forgotten in the comforting presence of the family he had never stopped knowing. Even the judge seemed affected, adjusting his papers but keeping an eye on the trio. He had presided over thousands of cases, yet moments like this were rare. Moments when justice, emotion, and instinct converged so powerfully that everyone in the room could sense the profound truth of the situation. As the courtroom slowly returned to formal proceedings, the energy had changed. What had been a trial, dominated by human law, now included an undeniable force of loyalty, memory, and instinct. The scales had shifted, and the little girl's 2 words had set the stage for an outcome no one could ignore. And in that quiet, remarkable moment, the emotional reunion reached its peak, leaving the courtroom in awe and the family whole once more. The courtroom was quiet, yet every seat held tension and anticipation. After hours of testimony, the focus had shifted entirely from legal arguments to the extraordinary bond between a child and a dog. Lily sat with Buddy at her side, fingers brushing through his fur, while Emily clutched her daughter's small hand, tears streaking down her cheeks. Even Officer Daniels, who had handled countless canine cases, stood in silent awe. The judge cleared his throat, calling the court to order. We have witnessed something extraordinary today. The testimony of the child, corroborated by the dog's instinctual behavior and documented history, must be considered with all due weight. His voice carried authority, but there was a softness, almost reverence, in it. The defendant shifted nervously, glancing from the child to the dog, and then to his attorney. His plan, carefully crafted over months, was unraveling. Years of deception, manipulation, and legal maneuvering could not counteract the simple, undeniable truth that had manifested in the courtroom. He tried to speak, to argue, but the room's collective focus silenced him before he could form a coherent sentence. Emily whispered to Lily, "Sweetheart, you've done it. You've shown everyone the truth." Lily, her small face illuminated with pride, hugged Buddy's neck. "I knew he'd come back," she whispered. "I never forgot him." Buddy responded with a gentle nudge of his nose, leaning into her embrace as if to affirm every word. The judge motioned for Officer Daniels to step forward. "Officer, based on your experience and the documentation of the dog's behavior, can you affirm that this is indeed the same animal previously owned by the child's family?" Daniels nodded, voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor. Every behavioral indicator, the whine, tail movement, body posture, and focused attention confirms that this dog recognizes the child. There is no doubt in my mind. The evidence is clear. This is Buddy." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Jurors whispered to one another, some wiping at tears, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The reporters' pens flew across pages, capturing every detail for headlines that would soon reach across the country. Even the defense attorney looked stunned, the weight of reality pressing heavily upon him. The judge addressed the courtroom, his gaze sweeping the room. "This court recognizes the significance of today's events. The bond between this child and the dog is undeniable. Further, the prior abandonment and tampering with the dog's microchip constitute evidence of obstruction and deceit. These facts will be taken into account when determining the outcome of this case." The defendant's face drained of color. He realized that legal strategy could not rewrite the truth revealed in front of the courtroom. Every careful plan, every fabricated alibi, crumbled under the weight of a 3-year-old's memory and a dog's unwavering loyalty. He leaned back in his chair, defeated, as if acknowledging that the law and the universe had conspired against him. Emily hugged Lily tightly, whispering, "It's okay now, baby. You were right. You never doubted him." Lily's small arms wrapped around Buddy, who leaned in, tail thumping gently, sensing the safety and love surrounding him. This reunion had not only restored the bond between child and dog, but had also restored a sense of justice that had been long delayed. Officer Daniels stepped forward, addressing the court. "Your Honor, I recommend that custody and care of the dog be returned to the rightful family immediately. The dog's instincts, history, and emotional attachment all point to this being his true home." The judge nodded, agreed. The court orders that the dog be returned to his original family immediately. Any further proceedings will consider this resolution as part of the official record. Justice, it seems, has been served through unconventional, but undeniable means. A sense of relief washed over Emily. Years of worry, grief, and sleepless nights had finally reached a resolution. Her daughter had been right all along. Lily's insistence, her unwavering memory of Buddy, had not only led to a reunion, but had also exposed a deeper truth about the dog's disappearance and the defendant's attempt to conceal it. The courtroom. Staff moved quietly, allowing Emily and Lily a moment with Buddy. The little girl whispered stories from the past 2 years, recalling playful antics and shared memories. Buddy responded with soft whines, nudges, and gentle licks, his body language radiating recognition and contentment. It was a reunion, not just of family, but of trust and loyalty, tested and proven over time. Outside the courtroom, reporters and photographers began to gather, eager to capture the extraordinary story. Headlines would soon declare, "Toddler reunites with lost dog in courtroom drama. Child's recognition brings justice and reunion, and bond between child and canine changes trial outcome." The story had all the elements of human emotion, suspense, and triumph, proof that truth often emerges in the most unexpected forms. Emily looked down at Lily, her eyes soft with tears and pride. "You were so brave, sweetheart. You knew your Buddy would come back." Lily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I never forgot him, Mommy. I knew he'd find me." Officer Daniels watched quietly, understanding that this case would remain in his memory forever. He had trained dogs, apprehended criminals, and participated in countless investigations, but he had never witnessed such a pure, instinctive reunion. The evidence was undeniable, but more importantly, the emotional impact would leave a lasting impression on everyone present. Even the jurors appeared moved. Some whispered softly, nodding to one another, realizing they had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment where truth, loyalty, and human emotion intersected in ways they could not have anticipated. The judge finally adjourned the court. But the echoes of the day's events lingered. Emily, Lily, and Buddy stepped forward together, a family reunited. The court staff allowed them a private moment before the formalities resumed. Lily hugged Buddy tightly, her laughter ringing softly. As the dog leaned in, warm and familiar, the defendant was led away, the weight of exposure heavy upon him. Justice had been served, not only through legal means, but through the extraordinary testimony of a child and the instinctive confirmation of a dog. It was a reminder that truth, no matter how deeply buried, often finds a way to surface. As Emily walked out of the courtroom with Lily on her hip and Buddy at her side, she felt an overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude. Years of uncertainty, fear, and sorrow had finally culminated in this moment of reunion and resolution. The bond they shared had endured separation, time, and loss, proving that love and loyalty could not be erased. Outside, reporters shouted. Questions, Cameras flashed, and the crowd buzzed with excitement. Emily held Lily and Buddy close, smiling through tears. "We're home," she whispered. Buddy wagged his tail, pressing against his little girl, as if affirming that he too had waited for this moment, never doubting, never forgetting. Lily looked up at her mother, eyes shining. "I told you, Mommy. I knew he'd come back." Emily kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Yes, you did, sweetie. Yes, you did." In the end, the courtroom had witnessed more than a legal proceeding. It had witnessed the triumph of memory, instinct, and love. A 3-year-old's certainty and a dog's loyalty had overturned deception, revealed hidden truths, and reunited a family. And as the doors closed behind them, Emily, Lily, and Buddy stepped into the sunlight together, free from fear, reunited, and whole once more.